Building Committee to order at 7 o'clock. Let me just hit the record button here. All right, so we're recording. This meeting is being held remotely in connection with the governor's order of 2020 to have all public meetings held forum. We're getting some feedback. Can you guys mute yourselves till we're, see if that helps? Let me try. All right, let me try again. So in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law due to the 2020 novel coronavirus. Hey, Andrew?
I think you may have the YouTube stream open somewhere.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. You can tell I'm a newbie still at this. All right, for the third time. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law related to the 2020 coronavirus outbreak, this April 12th meeting of the Norfolk Fire Station Building Committee shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. We are providing this meeting by Zoom. And let me confirm everybody who's supposed to be in the meeting is present. Chief Aaron Kinney.
Present.
Chris Baker.
Present.
Aaron Hunt.
Present.
Justin Yanosik.
Present.
And Kevin Champagne.
Present.
And Blythe Robinson present. So to start out the meeting, as I said, for the end of the last meeting, I will begin by chairing the meeting and then turn it over to whomever is selected to continue that role after myself. But the first item of business on our agenda is public comment. So I'm interested if anyone has any comment, any members of the public who'd like to speak to the committee. Please raise your hand or let us know you're interested in addressing. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll move along. So as I mentioned, the first order of business on the agenda is the selection of the committee chair, vice chair, and clerk. I think everybody's well versed in what those roles are, but does anyone have any questions? Any wondering what the actual role is or what they'll be needing to do? I can answer. Okay, great. So I guess at this point, I would open nominations for the position of the chair.
So I guess I'll speak up first. I'm certainly willing to be considered for the chair if other people will have me. To kind of give you a little background, I've like I talked about when we're being selected for the committee, I've worked on other fire station projects, albeit in a more of a supporting consultant role, but I have been a project manager on some sizable projects, not involved with a town board before. So I might stumble a little bit with the procedures. And I'm certainly not claiming that I'll know all the nuances of what we're going to have ahead of us. I think we certainly have some real challenges with this project. But if others will consider me to be the chair, I think I have some good background to offer in the past projects I've done. Two things I would say if I am selected chair is that I'd be interested in maybe setting a term limit, just say year and a half, 2 years, so that if we get to that point and people think if I am selected that I'm not doing a good job, that maybe we can kind of reorient ourselves. And then the other would be that, and I think you pointed this out to Blythe last time, is that I think it's important to have a clerk So whoever's going to, whether that's someone in the town, whether that's someone on this board, but that whoever's running the meeting, is also not taking notes and being expected to kind of put together meeting minutes after the meeting. So that being said, I don't know if anybody else is interested in being the chair, but I'll certainly offer up my services.
Just to jump in on your point about the term, generally boards or committees do reorganize annually. So it's something that we could take up again next spring and decide. We generally, appointments of the select board, for example, are in June for July 1st. We could get on that same schedule for whether the positions rotate around. And then with regard to clerk, I would like to get to the point where we have a paid clerk who'll take the minutes. I'm certainly happy to post the agendas and work with the chair and the vice chair to set all that. But if we end up with a paid clerk, then that person can take the minutes. They can come to the meeting, watch the stream, whichever. And then the clerk's role would be to review those written minutes and recommend them to the committees for approval.
Yeah, I think that, so that would that be a committee-wide term limit, really? Because I thought that the charge when this came on was that it almost was written indefinitely, but maybe it does make sense to put a potential end date on it.
Well, none of us sitting here today know how long the project will take to complete.
Sure.
So that's why I think there was no limit to the overall project itself. But as I say, generally committees do tend to reorganize or take it up each year. Maybe this chairman stays the same, maybe they don't, but they do tend to do that so that others have a chance to be in that role, or, somebody's coming on, somebody's leaving, that sort of thing. Anyone else want to weigh in or nominate, any other nominations, should I say, for chair? Hey, does someone want to make a motion to consider Kevin's appointment as chair?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Congratulations, Kevin. Would you like me to take over the rest of the appointments, or would you like to start from here?
I'll let you finish out this agenda.
Okay. And I'll do my best to guide, I promise. Okay, so then the next open position is vice chair. Anyone want to express some interest in that position?
I'll jump in. As I started the conversation last week, I'd be happy to jump in as vice chair. And as Kevin mentioned, I've been on a number of boards and committees in town, so there's a little bit of experience there. I might be able to help with. Also background as an architect and design of a fire station. All the stuff I think everybody here has heard before.
Excellent. Thank you. Anyone else interested in the position of vice chair? Okay. Anyone want to make a nomination for Mr. Hunt as vice chair?
I'll make
Make a motion.
Yep, so moved.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Justin?
Oh, thank you, Justin. I was writing at the same time. Okay, all in favor of Aaron Hunt as vice chair of the Fire Station Building Committee, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, excellent, unanimous. And the position of clerk. Say it's probably the most straightforward role. I will do the minutes until we find a paid clerk and then send them to the clerk for review. Anyone want to throw their hat in the ring for that job?
So then, just curious, if you're doing the minutes, what would be the clerk's, for my own knowledge, what would be the clerk's responsibilities?
To review them and agree that they're correct, recommend them to committee, and then sign them when they're finished, when they've been approved.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind being the clerk. Actually, I review and sign and send a substantial amount of meeting minutes for my current job anyways.
Okay, so what's one more, right?
Yeah, why not?
All right, so can I hear a motion for to have Chris Baker as clerk?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, and all in favor say aye.
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 Awesome, great. All right, we're off and running. Terrific. So turning it over to, so just Kevin, what I typically do for Kevin Calcutt and select board is when things come up on the agenda, he usually calls on the person who's kind of organized whatever the item is to give an overview and then dive into it at in whatever detail that we need to. And so on this one, on the RFQ, there's a copy of it that everyone has received, and I can put it up on my screen. So if you're okay with it, I will go through that. And I'm interested in the committee's input and debate on these various points for the goal of us approving it tonight with whatever changes that we make so that staff can get it out the door to the central register, the state's combine system, the advertising it, so we can get closer to actually hiring an OPM.
So should I read the agenda item first, Blythe, or?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So please consider approval of the RFQ to retain an owner project manager. So Blythe, if you want to walk us through what you've prepared.
That'd be great. So would anyone like me to share my screen or do you all have a copy handy?
I do have a copy.
I have one.
If you want to bring it up as you walk through it.
Sure, I can do that. I guess I have it on, so let me try to pull it up. Can everyone see that?
No.
No. All right. Not sure what I'm doing wrong.
There it is.
There it is.
There we go. Okay. So what I have to thank Matt Hafner for a lot of help with this. I think it's in pretty good shape, but there's definitely some points as we went through it that we wanted to review with you. And we've highlighted them in green so that you don't have to focus on all 48 pages of this document. So going down through it,
I think you might be sharing just your explore. Like, I think you have to share your screen, not a particular window that you have open, because we're just looking at your file explorer.
huh? Because I've got it open. That's what I'm. It says I'm screen sharing. That's what I don't understand. Because then I when I do that, I open the actual document. And I can see the first page of it, but you can't.
No. Oh, there we go.
There we go. All right, I need to be relieved of my chair duties soon, it seems. So on the RFQ summary, we've inserted the dates that we are fairly sure of. We have to double check with the timing of the central register and combis, but right now these are fairly safe. And the estimated construction cost, I realized this morning I do need to correct to the amount we're going to decide we want to put down on this. Moving on from there, I
Like,
think one of
which,
the most,
do
Sorry?
we have a agreement on what we think the estimated construction cost is?
we had talked the last time about $8 to $10 million based upon the cost of projects in our area in recent years. And when this project was first considered, when it was being designed by the previous architect, it was approximately 16,000 square feet. That's the best guesstimate that we have right now.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my, I think, big comments is just trying to, because I think, trying to set a not to exceed amount or some amount for the OPM is all kind of going to be guided by what we, a general idea of what we think this thing's going to cost. Now the space needs study that you sent, Bly, that I think it listed 22,000 square feet.
Yeah, and that was early on in 2015 before the town really took a different direction on the police station.
Yeah.
So I think we don't have a final version of this. That's all we've been able to find. I just know from hearing about drawings of the project that it had been reduced to between 16 and 17,000 square feet the further along in the process it got till it didn't go any further.
Because I think when I was looking at some of the recent information we had on a couple other projects I've worked on, I think I brought up last meeting that the 600 to 625 a square foot seemed about in line with those. And then if we escalate it out, say we're going to be building in 2 or 3 years, you might be 10% higher than that.
Yeah, I think this is, I think we want to be as close to realistic today as we can be,
Yeah.
but it's hard to say I think this is really what it says. It's an estimate. We've got to figure out, the program, how big we think is appropriate at $625 a square foot at 16,000 square feet. We're at 10 million.
Right. So you're probably going to be a little higher than that by the time this thing goes out. So, I mean, if it doesn't need to be, I doubt it needs to be dead on, but it doesn't seem like you're going to be around 8 million unless the square footage estimate is way off.
Okay. So would the committee be comfortable with a $10 million figure to start?
Once we set a figure, how difficult is it to adjust that?
It's not difficult in terms of the consultants. I think the difficulty comes if there's an expectation in the community that it's going to be a certain amount and then it's more. And then the justification.
But that expectation isn't being set by the number we put in the RFQ, right? The number we're putting in the RFQ it's representative of what we think the town is willing to spend and the fire station needs. And I think I agree a little bit with Kevin. I think I think 8 million might be a little low.
Okay.
Especially if we project out, and as you mentioned, another 2 or 3 years. I think 10 is, I would love for our OPM to come in and say, hey, look, if we say 10, they come in and say an appropriate range is 8 to 12, right? Something like that. But I think, or even if we were to make a bigger range, 8 to 12, right? Maybe it's better to give a range than it is to pick a number. I don't. That shows that there's a lot of conversation that still needs to happen rather than a single number, which seems to think we know what we're doing.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and I was going to kind of have. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it was going to be a similar consideration for listing what we think roughly their fee is going to be too. That I don't think really we're in a position yet until some updated legwork has been done to give something too finite. So I think a range is probably a good idea.
That's fine. What would everyone feel comfortable with?
I'm open to 8 to 12 unless you think that might be too big of a range for the town to be comfortable with. But I think that kind of captures, the scope of where the project could go.
Yeah, I think it's important with this project to be more realistic maybe than we were able to be in previous project, the other committee. And the worst case is that we're able to sharpen the pencil a little bit and somewhere less than 12. That's better than going up.
Right.
Now, what do you think the chances are that it's going to come in at 8? It seems pretty slim at this point.
I would, just to chime in a little bit, I would, based off a little bit of work that I've done, I would say coming in at 8 is highly unrealistic. Again, looking at the previous space needs assessment, I know that is not, that was one that was done as a draft, but most of it looks to be on par. I did compare it to a couple other stations that are kind of in the realm we're looking at. There's probably 1,500 square feet that I can look right off at hand that we could cut, but I would lean towards, again, I'd rather be, as Blythe said, I'd rather be on the side of us sharpening the pencil or discovering, hey, there's a bay we don't need, or a bay we can cut, or a room or something we could cut, as opposed to, I really don't want to get in a position where we're trying to build a project based off of a number that's unrealistic or a number that really doesn't address the need. I'd rather build it addressing the need and then sharpen the pencil in the corners and places where we can, to make it fit within the budget. But I don't think we should handcuff ourselves or say, okay, it's going to be 8 and there's no way it's going to be 8, or we're not going to be able to get in place what we need. I think, this has been a very long process. I know, it's important to me that we build it based off of need and trying to get, build some room for growth into it, but especially for right now, make sure we hammer the needs of the department and, get us operating efficiently and out of under one roof.
I mean, the
Similar-
60,000 square feet was even close, right? And we're around, say, $700 a square foot by the time this thing gets built. That's 11 million. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and I agree with the others here that I think if we list 8 million in any capacity, you're constantly going to be fighting that number, that it's going to be too low of a number. So my gut is telling me if we want to give a range, it's like 10 to 12.
I
I
agree.
agree with that. I think that 8 is just setting an unrealistic expectation. And then piggybacking on the chief's comments on the space needs summary, it's about 6 years outdated. And there are some things, especially in regards to cancer prevention and how firehouses are structured, that I don't think this space summary accurately portrays. So it may be a good idea maybe to incorporate getting a full space summary done, or revising this draft, or maybe updating it in some way.
Good point. Thank you. Is everyone comfortable with 10 to 12 million?
Yes.
I am, yes.
Yeah, and just one more comment on, I mean, I think that's a good number, but just keep in mind that that's a construction cost, right?
Right.
So when we're talking about project costs, we're talking about a percentage above and beyond that. So, you're now talking about going to the town, for something in the neighborhood of, 14, 16, 18 million for the project. So something to keep in mind.
That
That's
is
gonna be
actually
tough.
a good point. Last meeting, didn't we say that the 8 to 10 estimate that we were talking about was an all-in cost, including the OPM, the design, engineering, and construction?
Yeah,
Good.
Or
I believe you're right, Chris. And I think, yeah.
so if that's a percentage, and I can look back and kind of see what, you know, engineering costs usually are versus construction. I think it's somewhere on the order of like 15 or 20%.
Yeah, I think between them and the OPM, yeah, you're probably talking 25, 30%.
Yeah, yeah.
That.
You know, so that actually could put the estimated construction cost back into the $8 to $10 million range.
Well,
Only based on, you know,
if we're, but what we're listing here is the construction cost. I think Aaron, all you're pointing out is that the town can't look at that number and say, we're going to spend $12 million, because it's really going to be, if it is a $12 million construction cost, it's going to be a $15 million project to the town.
But when it says, you know, for an OPM advertisement, if it's, you know, estimated construction costs listed here, is that including the engineering costs, or is it just the actual construction?
but what the number that we're talking about is just the hard cost. It's not the soft cost.
I think I would read this as the hard construction cost.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm looking at that.
Trying to give these firms an understanding of what we think this project is.
Right. Right.
We're going to learn a lot working with them on what the project's really going to be.
Is it as easy as just changing the headline from estimated construction to estimated all in or something along those lines to make it a little bit more clear? Or is this more of a standardized form that we're dealing with?
It's not a standardized form. I mean, as many communities as there are that do these things, they've got their own style of how they script it. I took it from another community. We could make this whatever we want it to be. Or we can describe later that this is the construction cost, but we realize that, you know, soft costs and other fees will be, you know, may make the project run at a higher total amount than this.
Yeah. In my experience, it's the estimated construction cost is pretty common here because it's the one cost that you usually have the best handle on, right? You really need the OPM to come in to start to outline all the other soft costs. So, you know, if we start to put soft costs on top of this, now they're more guesstimates rather than estimates. So I think I would say it's fairly common to have an estimated construction cost here.
And the OPM is going to base their fee off of a percentage of the estimated cost anyways.
Right.
You know, so you don't want their estimated fee or their percentage fee to include the soft costs.
Good point.
I agree with Chris and Aaron. I think, you know, the industry standard is if you're taking a percentage, it's usually of the hard construction cost. So I think that's what this number should be.
So Blythe, I guess just to put this all in a frame of reference, I'm looking at the police station presentation. It says the anticipated fire station cost was 8 to 10 million. Can we say that that's an 8 to 10 million hard cost, or is that an all-in cost?
That was done at the time with absolutely, you know, no hard information based on other projects we had seen done in the recent years. I think if I recall the presentation, we qualified it, you know, orally very heavily that, you know, there was so much we didn't know yet. We were simply taking a stab at what the cost would be based on some projects that had been done like ours. We had no details to be able to gauge it off of.
All right. So then remind me as I'm looking through this presentation, the all-in cost for the police station was 10 million?
10.8.
All right, so we're coming out at the start and saying our hard costs are equal to what we spent on the police station.
Yes.
I don't actually think that's an unreasonable place to be, but just saying.
You're right, it probably isn't. I think the difficulty that we have is there's a lingering perception that we spent too much on that project and somehow this one would cost less. And I think it's going to be take some effort to help people, you know, level set that and understand what the reality is of this project and the cost of doing such work in today's market or 2 years from now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, that's definitely going to be a challenge is selling a bigger number, but I think it's also going to kind of the whole town a disservice. It's going to make our life even more difficult if we set too low of a number and then come back and say, oh, it's really $12 million, you know?
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's unfortunate, obviously, that the police station was over budget in such a way, but it, just because it was over budget doesn't mean the next project is going to cost less or, you know, have, you know, serve less of a purpose.
And we don't even know whether we're going to try and renovate this building in whole or in part, or replace it, take it down in stages and replace it there. And those will go into that discussion as well.
I think that all brings us back to the 10 to 12 being a good range to start with.
All right, 10 to 12 it is.
All right.
Moving along. So the next section I wanted to just vet with everybody is the project goals. As I mentioned last time, these are ones that occurred to staff. I want to make sure that these are goals that you feel comfortable with, all of us, or things to take away, things to add.
I thought it was good, to be honest. I didn't have anything else to add to it.
I agree.
I'm more nitpicky comments, I think, Blythe, from my point of view. Complete a building that meets the department's operational needs now and into the future. The future is a long time. It might be worth setting a, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever we think the right planning window is. Maybe 10 to 20 years as a range, something like that.
Is it reasonable to set an expectation for the building? We would expect this building to last at least 50 years.
Right.
It doesn't mean we need to build it out, what it may look like in 50 years, now, but at least have the capability or have it set to where, we can move a wall or add a partition that, allows for expansion that, eventually will come. None of us have a crystal ball and can say, okay, I'm going to need 8 guys in 10 years. Well, I don't know. It could be 10 years, it could be 20, but just to be able to have it. So again, I'm hoping that when this is completed, there's not going to be a burden from a capital standpoint or a need standpoint from the fire service perspective for, until I'm long gone, would be my goal, which is I'm at least 20 years before I retire. So
That's a perfect point. I mean, maybe it's worth saying, it's worth saying here, the project goal is to have a 50-year building. Right.
Okay, I can change that. And at least meet staffing needs projected 20 years into the future, 10 years.
I think we want to be careful how we word that to say, we need to plan for expansion, whether that be a certain percentage of it in the building, or as the chief mentions, a convenient place to add on a wing.
Right.
Right.
So generally say to plan for possible expansion of staffing, over the next decades.
Say over the next, possible expansion of personnel over the next 2 decades.
Are going to have to explain what that means, but they'll get the point.
Yeah.
No,
again, we're trying to give people an idea of what we're thinking, so they can respond to us and help tell us why they're the best firm to work with us.
Maybe we say something like consideration for, short-term expansion and long-term expansion.
Okay. Everyone good with that?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's good.
Any of the other goals anyone wants to talk about or add to? Okay, and I will of course fix the dollar figures on the bottom here.
Yeah. This is going to be a tough one for us to work through here, but I mean, it says is sustainable where cost effective to do so. Being an architect, it's hard for me not think sustainably. plus I think the cost effectiveness of it is intrinsic.
Okay.
And we're a green community. I don't, it's hard for me to go into this project without expecting some level of sustainability in it. I mean, cost effectiveness is going to be an overarching rule for all of this, but I think my recommendation is we might want to be a little bit more direct here. We might want to say is responsibly sustainable, something like that.
That's great. I wasn't sure until this committee got going whether that would be a high priority or a medium, or other priorities were more important than this one. That's why I wrote it vaguely.
Yeah, well, I'll continue my pitch there. I think it's supremely important. I also think, as I mentioned, it's intrinsic, and with some of the things we've heard Justin and the chief mentioned in terms of wellness and cancer prevention, all the more reason for this to be a healthy, well-being. I think, and when you're 50, 60 for a building, I think it would be short-sighted not to be aggressively sustainable.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe there's some mention that, well, I don't know if you would pursue lead with this type of project. I know that has an expense to it that typically might not really be worth it unless you're trying to put a plaque on a building. But
can't you pursue some of those things but not actually spend the money for the designation? You can.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of towns do, to be honest.
Yep.
They do it, but then they don't get the LEED certification because it's really just a piece of paper that it's probably more than I'm probably simplifying it, but it's a process. There's a cost to the process to go through that really doesn't change the type of building that you're getting. So,
Okay.
And I would also argue that if it's well designed, that the sustainable portions of the building will pay for themselves over time. And when sustainable construction becomes is when your return period is shorter, right? So if you're someone who's looking to invest in a building and flip it or sell it over, in 5-10 years, sustainability becomes less of a concern for an investment. But if you're a town and you're interested in the performance of a building for the next 50 years, sustainability becomes pennies on the dollar.
Okay. Great. Anything else about the goals? Okay, moving along. The other thing I wanted to, there's two things on this page. We need to talk about the project manager's fee, which I know needs to be changed. And then I just wanted to check in with everybody about the overall description of the project. So starting with the fee, based on your experience, several of you, what would you feel more comfortable including here? Because 100,000 doesn't seem correct.
So yeah, until we kind of talked about what we thought the estimated construction cost would be, I didn't have a thought yet on this number. I'm wondering if we approach it as that
It's a way to
frame this, all the more reason to, do you leave the rest of it completely open-ended, which I guess I would argue is probably fine.
The phases afterwards will be continuation of the project. Because if the feasibility study is completed and time period, that needs to be a waiting period to kind of decide what to do.
John will have
Right.
no stomach down to a 6 to 8 million, which is a completely different fee. So,
Yeah.
I guess I'm arguing myself into for a pretty small.
Leaving it.
percentage because we think that that's possible.
I think that's a good approach. Give them what we anticipate the fee for the feasibility study to be, and then should the project go forward, based on the scope of services herein, we anticipate the OPM's fee not to exceed 4% of the estimated construction cost. But I do agree with Aaron that their fee should never just be a percentage, because then rightly or wrongly, there's inherently a benefit to them as the project cost goes up. So
Right.
I think it's more just the benchmark that we know that they're in the correct ballpark, really, by listing that percentage. But I think the percentage is the right way to go because we don't know where that number is going to be. And I just am a little squeamish putting down, and whether we're held to it or not, putting a number down that's based on, say, the $12 million construction cost, and we really end up at 10.5, but we're always negotiating against that higher number.
Do you happen to know what the percentage was for the police station, or what it ended up working out to be?
The total dollars was in the neighborhood of 350,000, but it's such a convoluted project because
Yeah.
the architect, the OPM really left, not too far into construction, so they didn't do really any of that work.
Okay.
But there must have been a budget in there, no?
There was, and I'll dig it out for you. I didn't bring that home with me on the stick drive, so I'll send that.
I did do a little asking around before this meeting. Now, the architects I work with, they're never really involved in setting the OPM's fees. But they said oftentimes when they do the construction budgets, they'll budget about 3 to 4% for an OPM. Now, that's somewhat tied to the overall construction cost. The one example that this architect gave me was that they're working on one in Wakefield. That's a smaller renovation. It's only $6.5 million, and the OPM's percent on that one is closer to 6%. So obviously, as the construction cost goes down, the percent is really going to creep up. But the one that I thought was relatively close to our project was one in Tewksbury's $13.5 million job, and the OPM's fee was 4% of that construction cost. So I think 3.5 to 4% is probably a decent guess at this point.
That's really what we're doing. I mean, don't feel that this is etched in stone. We're going to put out there what we think it's going to be, and then we're going to work hard to negotiate what we think is fair once we have a firm that we're satisfied with. Any thoughts on how much the feasibility study should be? Because I don't have a sense of that. I mean, our records say that we were going to spend 35 for one in 2015, but we can't actually find that one was done. That was 6 years ago.
That was the OPM's fee, or that was the?
Supposedly that was what was to be paid for a feasibility study.
To the architect.
Yeah. I guess to the OPM, but I'm not sure. So I'm looking for
I honestly don't know. I guess my guess would be maybe 10% of their total fee. I mean, that 4%, I think, like you mentioned, Blythe, is really going to be backloaded. The construction is going to be such, especially if they're clerk of the works. And as a point of reference, that 3.5 to 4% for the Tewksbury project did include the OPM being the clerk of the works. So I think a lot of their number is going to be at the end of the project, really. So
just doing some quick math, if the project was 12 million estimated construction, 4% is 480, 10% of that's 48. So Aaron had thrown out 50 before. It sounds like we might be kind of in the same zone.
Yeah, I don't know if we meant to end up that way, but it does seem that way.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe we put a range there too, right? We say 40 to 50,000 for phase
Right.
one.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And then 3.5 to 4% for
Yeah,
project itself overall.
For the total project, correct.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Anyone have any different thoughts? Okay, well, I will rework that section to cover a range for feasibility phase only, and then what a range of a total percentage of the overall project through construction.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we are going to phase our contract. We'll have an initial contract with a firm for feasibility, and then the contract can be amended to add the other phases, assuming we want to continue working with them. Great.
Yeah, I think assuming the town wants to continue and, you know, select board approval of the project.
Yep. How about the overall description of the project? Any thoughts about that?
I didn't have any comments on it.
Anything else?
It's more of a description of the project history though, right? It doesn't say too much about what we actually think the project might be. Like for instance, there's no mention of 16,000 square feet.
Okay, good point.
You know, or even, you know, the previous feasibility study was 16,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think if you're going to put that in, I would caveat it and just say the previous feasibility study said 16,000 square feet, but we're interested in performing an updated feasibility study. Because I mean, I don't know if anybody here really knows if that was accurate or not.
No, we don't. And then I can also play off of what we said at the beginning, which is we're looking to build, you know, to have a facility that, you know, is going to be is going to serve the town for 50 years. Will be able to be expansion will be possible depending on staffing needs going forward, something like that.
Yeah, I think it might also be beneficial to, we talked last time about some of the assets that we already have, right? It might be beneficial to get those in here somewhere, right? Like there's already a septic system, right? We've
Okay.
already done some site work, right? There's been some site exploration done. We know there's ledge on site. Right? So there's some things we know that would be helpful for them to know as we get into this. It might be good to stick those in here.
Okay. Good point. I can work with Matt on that. Any other thoughts? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So I didn't highlight the whole section, but these are the specific services that goes on for a couple of pages. I'm just going to scroll slowly through because I think I did.
I had a comment on the, actually the one you're on right now, design documents and cost estimate review. No, the first one under pre-construction.
Okay.
So I
Yep.
didn't see it listed here, but I think it's a good idea to have the OPM do an independent estimate at a couple stages in the project.
Okay.
Certainly we'll have the architect carry their own cost estimator, but I think at least in the early stages of the project, it's good to know that they're aligned. So I think at least one, maybe a design development,
Okay.
and possibly one at either schematic design or construction documents.
Okay. Any other thoughts about that from anyone else? Okay. I'm going to keep scrolling. Bidding phase. So Matt and I have had some discussions about this, which you can see if you had a chance to look at the paragraph. The way this town who had got this from had written it, the OPM was really going to take over the bidding phase, whereas Matt and myself are more used to the the OPM playing more of a supporting role and the architect running the bidding phase, which is what you see if you look at the end of this paragraph. Especially since we have an architect on the committee, I'm interested in the committee's thoughts on this one, which way to leave it.
I think it's better to leave the financial responsibilities to the OPM, especially the way this RFQ is written, where they take on a lot of the reporting and whatnot of it. I would lean towards leaving the bidding in their pocket as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not an architect, but I didn't understand the reasoning of why it was being left up to the architect. I agree with Aaron. I think negotiating contracts and finalizing contracts, I think, should be the OPM. I mean, certainly, I think the architect can weigh in on if they think that there's scope missing possibly.
Okay.
But I think actual negotiation of contracts, again, I mean, I'm not an architect, so I don't know if they do that typically, but it would seem that it's more of an OPM role.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I think they're gonna have to work very closely together. The architect's gonna have, that firm's gonna know what they have in the, we're all gonna know what we have in the plans, but they're gonna know them intimately. And,
and I think you can say maybe work with the architect to review the bids, something like that.
Well, I mean, the architect will certainly have the responsibility to review the bids and make sure that all of the scope of work that's shown in the documents is covered. But I think you want the architect paying attention to what's in the documents and the design of the building. And I think you want the OPM paying attention to the contracts and the finances. And
Right.
most of bidding is contracts, finances, and negotiations. It's not changing documents and designing a building. So.
all right, I will correct that tomorrow.
One other minor comment, Blythe. I think it's supposed to be a comma, not a period, between bid protests and rebidding.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. Got that. All right. And then job meetings, let me just remind myself. I think Matt's thought about this was that the architect is not on site as much as the OPM is going to be. Architect, depending on where they're located, is maybe going to be the project once a week or every other week. And the project manager is going to be there, assuming more. So who should be the one running those meetings is the question that we have here.
Yeah, I think particularly if we put in that they're going to be clerk of the works, I mean, the OPM is going to be there every day. I could go either way on this. I mean, I've seen the minutes prepared by both in the past. Or
why aren't the job meetings run by the contractor?
That's a good point. But so
I've generally seen them run by either the OPM or the architect. It's a preference really for us here.
I would argue they should be run by the contractor.
I know typically when we serve as engineer of record on a lot of projects, we will run the meetings, take minutes, distribute them. Not typically the contractor. So in this case, it may be the architect if they're presiding over submittals that are coming in, being the end all be all before things go out. So I would say it would be either between the architect and the OPM.
Aaron, what's your opinion? I guess what's your reasoning for saying the contractor should run the meeting? Is that just past experience or?
Well, it's personal experience. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the benefit of, I'm trying to think through the benefit of having the architect running the construction job meetings. And I don't see it.
I would say records. Contractors tend to not, in my past experience, keep the best records, minutes, that kind of stuff. Keeping track of what decisions are made during the meetings.
I
You know,
also think it sets a tone. The OPM is our representative who's keeping the other two players, not honest is not the right word, but making sure that they're acting in overall our best interests. So having them running the meeting and, maybe pushing back on, I had a project I worked on in Upton. The OPM was invaluable to vetting even the change orders that the architect wasn't doing as solid a job as we wanted him to do, and pushing back both on the contractor and the architect to say, I think the cost of that plumbing work is too high. We shouldn't take you, 3 days to do the work. It should take 2. And that was great.
Yeah, but we could, the architect and the OPM could do that without running the job meetings.
True.
That is true. Yep.
I guess I'm just thinking this through. I mean, the job meetings in construction are about the progress of construction and what needs to be done to move the project along. And the party most responsible for that is the contractor. So, and I would think that the job of running and recording the job meeting should be on the contractor. If it wasn't, I would go to the OPM before I went to the architect.
So I guess if we want to cross the architect off the list, unless someone else has, my initial thought reading this was that this should be the OPM's job, is keeping the meeting minutes.
Yeah.
But I could see the merit of having the contractor do it.
And I'm trying, all my Massport projects, the public projects in Massport, they're all run by the contractor. I don't think that's an unusual request.
I can rework this so that the OPM attends all the meetings, just acts as our representative, but the job meetings are run by the contractor. Something like that.
Run and recorded by the contractor.
I mean, what would be the benefit of having the OPM sort of running the meetings is that they're not really maintaining responsibility for the contractor, right? I mean, the contractor is ultimately, it's not going to be contracted to the OPM, it's going to be contracted to the town, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I guess I was kind of thinking that the OPM is they're not an independent third party, but they're not the designer, they're not the contractor. They're almost someone kind of mediating in between.
The mediator.
That it might be a good reason to have them keep the minutes.
Yeah. I guess
Again, this is something we're giving them what we think the project's going to go. We're going to all learn some things we didn't know before as we go through this. We're going to change some things, and we'll negotiate exactly what we want them to do in that contract.
Yeah,
I think
maybe just strike that sentence then. Just leave the meeting minutes shall be prepared by the designer and reviewed by the project manager on awarding authority's behalf out. We can deal with that when we get to a contract, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think especially if we're having the OPM be the clerk of the works, it's really not going to be that much additional money if they need to be keeping minutes. They're already going to be there pretty much full time. So.
Okay. All right, I think we're good.
I had a few comments. Sorry, Blythe. I know you're trying to keep things moving
Sorry about
here. No, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm over picking here, but so I was looking at the schedule and things, and I was thinking of the ultimate construction contract. And I mean, I know a lot of public work is design, bid, build, but I've also been involved with construction manager at risk contracts. Does the town have a stomach for construction manager at risk contract, or?
I thought we did until both Matt and Todd attended a recent MCPPO training about construction manager at risk and came away with a rather bad taste in their mouth about how well that could work here. I don't have detail to back up their thought on it, but it's certainly worth discussing. I did a construction manager project at risk in Connecticut where they have no state bidding laws, and it couldn't have gone better. So I'm not exactly sure what the difference is here in Massachusetts, but it's certainly worth discussing at some point. It is possible in Massachusetts to do that, but I guess they left me with the impression that it wasn't, they didn't see the value was that much different or better. With all the things hoops you had to jump through, you might as well just do a regular low bid 149 project.
But I guess that's something we don't need to decide now, right?
No, we don't. I think it's definitely something we should talk about.
All right. So in the communication, record keeping, and task tracking procedures, I think we should specifically put in online storage and access in there.
You want a different?
It says such as a shared drive, but I don't think we should. I mean, I think we should specifically say we expect, online storage and access of project files.
Yeah, that was absolutely critical to Matt after the police station project.
Yeah.
He just called it a shared drive, but I can change it to online access.
Well, I just don't think such as a shared drive is indicating the fact that we're requiring it.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
At least that's not the way I read it. I don't know about others. All right, and then I got into the pre-construction phase, and I mean, I guess we need to establish the schedule, but it doesn't really talk to design phases like feasibility, concept, design development, CDs, bidding, negotiation, addendas, early packages, site work, structure. I guess the thought is that we'll get to all of that with the OPM, right?
Yes. I think we're trying to lay out here how we anticipate a project may go, and the things that we're going to need someone to do.
Right.
Be on top of.
So then I found the value engineering paragraph interesting in that it treats it almost as a one-time event. I'm wondering if it might be, I mean, it's hard to value engineer publicly bid projects because once they're bid, they're bid. So the value engineering is really, it's done through the estimating as we go through the design and pre-construction phase, right? So it's an ongoing process that we need to stay on top of, as I think Kevin or Chris mentioned about, a third-party cost estimator. So I don't have any great ideas, but the way this paragraph reads, it reads as more of a one-time thing. Whereas I think it would be better if we made it read as if it was an ongoing evaluation process.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think especially if we're going to have outside cost estimates done at different points, we're going to learn from each of those, and that may result in value engineering being necessary more than once to get back on track.
Yeah.
So I can change this to say that town anticipates value engineering at various points to meet its overall, budget.
Yeah, or you just say simply value engineering is considered to be an ongoing process, particularly after milestone estimates are completed.
Yep.
The project is on budget.
Okay.
My next comment's all the way down on the RFQ instructions, so I don't know. That might be the next topic.
All right, let me scroll here.
I'll get everybody started while you're scrolling. I found it interesting that we require 6 flash drives.
And that's why I highlighted, because I didn't know, not knowing all of you very well, I don't know if all of you want to read everything and you prefer it on a flash drive,
Yeah.
or just a few of you want to review and qualify people and we need 3 in hard copy. It was simply to, again, I borrowed this from another entity and I didn't want to assume what we wanted to do.
I mean, I guess we don't have the online storage system up and running yet, right? And
We do not.
Yep. So we can't use that. But again, 1 flash drive would be, if submitted to the town, all of that data could be transferred to us by the town. Maybe that's
Yep.
not something the town wants to take. I don't know. Just 6 seems like an overkill by a factor of 5 to me.
Well, the town it came from, they do everything in overkill mode, so. I will not say their name, but that's why I highlighted. I wasn't, I didn't want to presume I knew how each of you like to review stuff like this, so.
I'll also add to that if we are adopting being truly sustainable, then 6 large tree killing packages of paper is probably not required either. I would just assume do any reviews I'm doing online.
Are you all, to the extent you all want to be involved in this particular phase, is electronic okay with you?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's fine with me.
if they can, if they can send it via like a share file or something like that, then, that's fine.
Okay. I should point out at this point that Matt had been investigating, Project Dog. He got a cost of $550 to post it there in the manner that we need it posted, and broken out so the qualifications section comes differently from from a price proposal, separate, back in electronic envelope. I haven't bought these services before, so I don't know if that's a reasonable price or not. It seemed reasonable to me, but just want to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, the town may very well require a hard copy, right? But
Our individual bidding requirements are, the towns are not that specific. We're just following whatever the state law is. So, especially if we're relying it up on Project Dog, I can simply say 1, electronic packet and a flash drive, and that's sufficient. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, if we want to have 1 hard copy, I think that's probably not a bad idea. But then everything else can be electronic as long as it can be distributed.
Okay.
I did have a couple of comments before this.
Great. Where would you like to go back to?
So under number 4, under construction phase, performance monitoring, I think it's important that the OPM is on site on a daily basis during the project, and I don't think there's anything in here that says that. It just says monitor and observe the performance of the contractor, which can mean a lot of things. So maybe we just put in here specifically that we're anticipating they provide clerk of the works services.
are we?
I guess in my opinion, I think it's a good idea. I don't know if we need to tell them that now, or if it's something we add after the fact. But I think a daily presence, eyes and ears of the town is important.
It can be handled a variety of ways. It could be a full-time clerk, a part-time clerk, no clerk. It's up to us.
Well, I guess to Kevin's point, we could put in there that we expect representation daily without saying how, right?
It's probably a happy medium. And then this might be kind of a minor clarification, but under submittals,
Yes,
I thought it should be submittals and RFIs.
okay,
And then the last sentence, the project manager shall make recommendations to the awarding authority and designer with respect to substitutions. It felt like it should say project manager and the designer make recommendations to the awarding authority with respect to substitutions. I would think the designer would be involved in accepting a substitution before presenting it to us.
so just tell me what, I didn't get a note down, just tell me how you'd like the sentence changed.
So I think it should read, it's not on the screen. So submittals, so number 7,
Yep,
here, why don't maybe I can share, can I share my screen?
I don't know if I have to stop doing it for you to do it.
Oh, yeah, you would. Okay. So number 7, I felt it should read submittals and request for information, RFI.
Yep, I got that part.
Okay. So then advise the contractor of procedures for expediting, processing, and obtaining the designer's review of RFIs and approval of shop drawings. And then the second to last sentence, I think should read the project manager and designer shall make recommendations to the awarding
Okay.
authority with respect to use of substitutions.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So we're just moving the word designer before awarding.
Yeah, it
authority.
just seems like it's almost, the way it reads, it's almost the OPM is telling the designer what substitutions they're going to accept.
Right. That might not go well
Right.
sometimes. Okay. Did anybody else have any comments on these sections that they wanted to talk through? All right, I keep going. So then to get down to, of course, I'm going to change the fee again in this section to mirror what we have earlier. Project schedule. So I noticed I got a typo or two in here. This was what Matt and I generally spoke about when he and I talked about it again this afternoon. He was double checking, but he thinks if I put my nose to the grindstone in the morning, we could get this off to the Central Register by their late tomorrow afternoon deadline and get it posted, which is great. So we might be able to pick up a week here. But generally we were making it available, having a tour, which I obviously need to organize with Chief Kinney, giving firms after that, 2 weeks to kind of dig into them, and then a deadline by which they submit questions if they have any, so we can get an addendum out. Yeah, submissions, and then this is when it's going to get busy for the committee, determining the top finalists who meets the qualifications, figuring out when we're going to interview the firms, and timing that with a select board meeting as they meet the first and third Tuesdays of the month. And then you get through the contracting, and then I think the other big decision here is how long do we give them to complete the feasibility study? I threw in there, a fairly long, I threw in there 8 months. That may be way too long. Maybe it can be done shorter. I don't have a good sense of that. And then being very hopeful, how long would it take from the feasibility study being done to get the green light, go through all the design and be ready to go to town meeting to get the money to build a project. I only gave it, a little over a year, and that might not be enough. So that's what the thought was behind this section, and I welcome thoughts and changes.
So I guess starting from the bottom, personally, 14 months from completion of the feasibility to having at least bid documents, I think is doable. Above that, I guess my only thought was that it seemed like maybe we could improve the times by roughly a week. I think we had 2 weeks between when the RFQ became available and when we did the project briefing, and then another, say, 2 weeks for questions, and then another week after that for the submission. I feel like you could probably, everybody could have their questions in. It's not like they have subcontractors really. They could have questions in by a week after the 5th, and then kind of move everything up a week from there. I don't know if that helps, if the select board's only meeting certain days, if that's helping at all, or if you're still basically going to be stuck at the same board review date.
Yeah, I think in June, their meetings, let me just get my schedule up here. In June, they meet the 1st and the 15th. So, I mean, it's not that they won't have an extra meeting. They've been great about that. So they said to them, really want to get going. Can we squeeze in a meeting the last week in June? I can, or, the 4th week in June, I could probably get them to do that. And I'm certainly more than happy to ask.
Well, with 148 days in June, it's going to take a while to get through June.
I know. All right. In the track changes, we're having a tough time the other
You
day.
could probably get the whole project done in June, maybe.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's always good to gain a week, but in this instance, I'm not sure
It could
you're really gaining anything. But yeah.
Let me see if when Matt and I really tighten it up tomorrow, and if we get it out the door this week, maybe we can pick up a week, in each section. And I guess the only other point to that is, are people generally around? Does anyone have any plans that we couldn't figure out having a few? Because I think we're gonna have to decide whether we want to have the meetings in person or by Zoom with the designers. With the OPM candidates, and then picking some fair amount of time to do that.
Yeah, I'm away the end of June and very beginning of July, but it looks like maybe this selection would happen before then.
Yeah, that's my goal. I want to get this done for summer, before summer, so we're off to the races.
So I threw out the cutting off a week. If that really doesn't gain us anything, then I think giving them the time listed is fine. I guess the benefit would be if you can shave it down a week and now you don't need a special meeting for the select board, then that could be advantageous. Just
Yep.
You're not burdening them with another meeting.
Okay. Other thoughts, questions?
So is the rough timeline, if the contract's executed the end of July, we're thinking another 2 or 3 months to bring the architect on board. I just kind of wrote down on my notes that if that meant architect on board in October or November, and then you've got about, say, 3 or 4 months for a feasibility study. Was that the general thought process? I think that seems reasonable, personally.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this and know that it's going to take 2 or 3 months to hire the next
Right.
group.
Well, we hired the OPM a lot quicker than that.
So, yeah, we should be able to, and then they're gonna help us run that process. So, because that's part of what they do.
So I mean, well, maybe not. I guess maybe
I
by.
was going to say, when I added up the weeks, Aaron, I thought it was roughly the same period of time. By the time you get
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So I just don't have a sense of how long the feasibility study will take.
But it's not really the feasibility study that's 8 weeks, right? It's it's hiring the architect, it's hiring the designer, and then, or the design team,
Yeah.
and then doing the feasibility study.
Mhm.
Right. So
Yeah.
you might actually want to make that 2 phases, right?
So add in between July 30th and March 1st, retaining the architect.
Yeah, retain architect and consultants, something like that. But I think if you look at, if we're broadcasting the RFQ roughly end of April, you're talking 3 months from then to getting their contract executed. If you do the same 3 months, you're talking August, September, it's end of October that they're on board. So then they have November, December, January, and February to do the feasibility study.
Does that seem like enough time from the experts in the room?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll add that section. And then, if we don't make the May 2023 town meeting, then I would hope at the very least we get to the fall. Generally in November.
Yeah,
What are we going to the May meeting with?
Ideally, we would be going to the May meeting with, well, we have to decide whether we want to go based on our estimates, or we want to bring actual bids and know exactly what we're going to be contracting for,
Right.
plus a contingency.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think you're gonna get an estimate on March 1st.
well,
I think you're getting a design package on March 1st, which can then be estimated.
Well, and the feasibility study is complete, you're going to know whether what we're going to do, which way we're going with the building. Are we tearing it down and replacing it? Are we renovating it? And then after that, is 14 months enough time to go through the phases of design?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I
Are we
missed
bidding
I missed
it?
the 2023.
Yeah. So,
I-
do we need to leave ourselves longer than that? Is that too tight a?
well, I think we can keep this date. I think the May 2023 would work. But at the end of 14 months, I don't think you're going to have the project bid and a contractor on board to go to the town with it.
It's a reasonable date to hold for the RFQ.
I think, but I think more realistically, we're probably going to be going off of a third-party estimate.
Well, I think we'll want to think that through, because that's, that in a sense is what happened with the police station, and it wasn't accurate at the end of the day. It wasn't on point. So more discussion at a later point about that, probably. Okay. Any thoughts on the proposal review process?
Hey, Blythe, I just wanted to chime in really quick, and it's not necessarily addressing anything in the OPM RFQ. I think, the discussion's been great. I'm glad we have people with the level of expertise that we have on board. I just wanted, in terms of discussing timelines, I think one of the things that's a heavy burden for my personnel right now, and I just wanted to put out there on the table just for thought, because it does kind of fall into the timeline at some point, is the trailer. Right now, we're in that kind of overburdened situation. I really was hoping we could, I kind of have a behind the scenes goal of getting us into a better suited facility, temporary facility, or the new trailer before we get to the winter months upcoming, or the coming winter, to hopefully, have a better, less overburdened situation during the inclement weather and all of those kind of things. So I just wanted to put that out there, and just, it's just something that I have in my mind, and looking at the I don't want it to fall by the wayside, if you will, because it is something that is, important to the operation, at least moving forward till we can get the new station built, which we all know is years off.
I think we, just to put it, I don't disagree with you, Chief, but I think it will be important to have some input from the experts that we hire to make sure that, I don't think anyone doesn't think we need it. We just want to make sure that what we're going to do and where we're going to put it is going to not hamper the design or the construction that needs to happen around it, that's safe and in the right place. It's just my thought. Certainly others should chime in on that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this from the last meeting. It seems to me that where the current trailer is sort of in an isolated area of the site. And if we're thinking of future expansion, that to me says that there's potentially an add-on structure that would come down the road. So that would mean that the building is shunted either far right or far left on the property, which I would think would give plenty of space to keep what's there, at least for the time being.
Anybody else?
I mean,
Well,
is there?
if this is a priority and we want the OPM's opinion on it, then it should be part of the RFQ.
Okay, good point.
There should also be something in there as to how long the OPM is going to need to, sort of form an opinion on that, because, the feasibility study is going to take time. The feasibility study isn't really going to have a design in it, so we don't really know which way the building is going to be shifted. So then you are looking at quite a substantial amount of time in order to decide if the trailer is going to work, and then order it, have it built, delivered. I know we talked last week on the the last meeting, on the substantial lead time to actually get that trailer in. So I think waiting on the OPM to do that might be a substantial amount of time.
Well, if the plan is, ideally to get it in before the winter, and we're bringing the OPM on board the end of July, maybe that can, if it's in the RFQ, maybe that can be one of their first orders of business is, hey, we've purchased this trailer, it's going to be here, in so many months. Can we figure out, in your opinion, a good spot to put it?
Yeah, rather than their opinion on whether or not the trailer should be purchased, tell us where it should go.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that the trailer should be one of the first things that's purchased for this project.
Matt's been doing some more work on investigating it. I think, we're not ready to pull a trigger on putting out a bid tomorrow by any means, but I think he's working towards being able to do that. So I can definitely check in with him. And I can add a section in the pre-construction, in the beginning phase, about assistance with this.
I kind of like the idea that we say it's on the way, tell us what to do with it as one of their first orders. I think that's a good way to go here.
Okay. Everyone good with that?
Well, I agree.
Yes.
Right. I'm gonna just scroll unless someone has something else after these. These are basic certifications. They have to have things that we expect them to tell us. Got forms they need to fill out as part of their submission. There's the designer, the DSB forms that both architects and OPMs fill out as part of these projects. I'm just going to get down to the contract. So in the this is a contract that we received draft from our town council for a project like this. Obviously, this is negotiated with the firm we end up selecting, but we simply put this out there as this is what we anticipate we're going to want you to sign. There are a couple of things I just wanted to point out. The term is, I pointed this out because I do want to change this. I want to make sure that it's clear that we're going to sign this contract for an initial phase, and then you know, upon mutual agreement of the parties, it can be amended to add further phases so that it's clear we're not signing on to them for the whole rest of this if it doesn't work out. And then the other thing I wanted to tell you was jumping down to if we have an issue with a firm, this excuse me, certification, sorry. Matt wanted me to add that they are, the firm is certified by the state in public procurement so that they are as knowledgeable as some of our staff is and all the rules and regulations for going through a project like this. Don't want to have anyone advise us incorrectly of how to do work.
Oh, Blythe, if you can go back to that.
Sure.
I'm assuming we don't want an emphasis on animal shelter buildings.
God, did I not get all of those? That was one of the things. Yep, I see it. Thank you. I'm glad everyone reads closely.
Could be a nice wrinkle for the project, but
Appreciate that. Ah, here's Matt. He must have finished his other meeting. I'm just letting him into the meeting. Yes, this was for an animal shelter in Milton. I must have missed one of those, so thank you. Appreciate that. And then lastly, this contract had contemplated a trip directly to Superior Court if we had issues, spoken to town council about that, and he's recommended some language to substitute mediation instead as a first step. If we are
It seems prudent.
Yes. So I just wanted to tell you I was changing that. So I think those are all of the things I wanted to point out. I don't think there were any others. Nope, that's it. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. So that was everything. I think I've taken some pretty good notes. I will go over the schedule with Matt tomorrow morning. We'll see if we can get it onto Central Register and so on right away. Kevin, do you have any time tomorrow? If I have any questions or want to just double check any points, I can contact you.
sure, yep.
Okay.
I think I sent my cell phone number to.
Okay, I'll check with Judith in the morning. I know she's working on that.
Sure.
All right. I think I'm all set. Kevin, I'd recommend that the committee vote to approve the RFQ with the amendments we made tonight. That would be my suggestion.
Sure. So we'll make a motion to approve the RFQ pending tonight's comments.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
And
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Is there anything I need to say at the end of that now?
Good.
Okay.
But yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to take the rest of the meeting from there?
Next agenda item, please consider setting a meeting schedule. So I think we talked about the last meeting that it would be the second Monday of each month. I'll make a motion to formally approve that.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 I think technically you have to also go with all those against, unless it was unanimous. I don't know.
Okay. Anyone against? Okay,
Formalities.
all right. We'll get there.
We will.
Okay, please consider a recommendation for a new committee member. So as Blythe issued last week, Jim O'Neill has resigned after our first meeting. So I think, Blythe, you mentioned we could basically review the previous applications that were received, correct?
Correct. So I reached out to, there were 4 other people. I reached out to them all last week to say, hey, there's been a development and we already had your application. Would you still be interested? I heard back from from two of them. Brian Mellon has had some other things come up, and he's busy. So the three in your packet are David Axberg, John Kent, and John McCorney. David emailed me back to say, and just to keep it interesting, we also have openings on the ZBA. Both David and John had expressed interest in that as well. I heard back from David. He said, I'm still interested in the Fire Station Building Committee and ZBA. I just can't do both. I did not hear from John Kent, yes or no. And Mr. Porkany said he was also still interested. I'm not exactly sure when the select board will take up the ZBA. I think they'll take it up next week, but there's a lot going on with that. So I'm not sure where that's going to land. And they have other candidates besides these two. So it would be my suggestion, if any of you have some thoughts. You only briefly got to meet the gentleman when we were all together. What I know about them is what's in your packet. David has a civil engineering degree. John works for the state and is an engineering officer. And Mr. Porkany is a BA degree and wants to be just interested in the project and run his own company.
So I'm sorry, it was Kent that you didn't get a response from?
I did not hear back from John Kent this time. I don't know that he's not interested. He just didn't respond to my email saying yes or no.
I guess in the interest of offering an opinion, reading through them, I'm not going to say I remember them all specifically, but reading their resumes, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right, McCorney. It sounded like he was a small business owner or has run his own business, and I think that was one of the reasons why the select board originally selected Mr. O'Neill. So I felt like maybe it's a reasonable swap to get a different perspective on the board. So that was my first choice, I guess.
I seem to remember John Kent having a pretty good background. I think he'd be a pretty strong candidate too. I don't know what are we hoping to vote for someone tonight, Blythe? Are we waiting for more responses? Is there a formality here that we have to go through?
I haven't reached out any further than this group because it seemed like we already had a couple of viable candidates. Yeah. I think the select board generally is interested in what a standing committee thinks about its future members. So you could handle it a couple of ways. You could say, hey, of the candidates that have applied the last time, we really think that one or two of them, one specific one or more than one would be good options. And then I can, let's just say for argument's sake, it is either of the two Johns. I could reach out to John Kent and say, hey, we discussed it last night. The committee would like to put your name forward. Are you good with that? And make sure that, we have a yes.
Right. Yeah, I guess I don't know if we need to vote on one, but I hate to vote on one and then they're not interested and then we're back to square one.
Yeah.
Next meeting.
Is there a potential to have them, join the next meeting and do something almost similar like we all did the first time? Just because I think just like the rest of you, we had a very short opportunity to meet them. We were probably more concerned with talking about ourselves rather than choosing someone else at that point. So we're kind of in a different role now.
Yeah, I mean, we can continue on with 6 members. We don't have to have someone as soon as possible. I'm not sure that we'll, having just set the meeting schedule, I'm not sure that we need to meet on May 18th if we haven't gotten we don't have the responses back from the OPM firms. We could wait on it.
We could meet on the 18th just to settle this issue, right?
Have
Make
a
it a-
quick
Yeah.
quick meeting. Yeah.
Yep.
You see if you get responses and have any of the respondees attend a meeting.
Sure.
Yeah, so I actually wrote down both Johns was for
Okay.
my kind of initial list because I thought that John Kent, like Aaron mentioned, I think has sounds like some good state work experience as well.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good positive.
He's also a lead green associate according to his
Yeah.
application.
He's got Aaron's vote apparently.
Need a lead compatriot here. If I'm going to make as strong a pitch as I made at the beginning of this meeting.
All right, well, why don't I reach out to John Kent and see if I can see where his interest lies. And then see if they can come to whatever our next meeting's gonna be based on, either our regular schedule or how the timing of the RFQ proposals comes in. And go from there. Okay.
So then do I need to make a motion to close that?
No, we don't have to, since we're not actually voting on a decision. Just turn it over to me to follow up with them as we discussed.
Okay. So then our last agenda item, please consider approval of the minutes. I don't know if anyone had anything in the minutes that they wanted to discuss.
So they're in your packet, hopefully. I tend to try to cover the gist of conversations, not everything everybody said. So hopefully everyone thought they were thorough and accurate. If they are, then I think, Kevin, you could ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. If anyone doesn't have any comments, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second his motion.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Unanimous.
Plus a dog.
The dog was opposed, maybe?
Dog doesn't get a vote, unfortunately.
That's my puppy is barking at attention on me, I guess.
What kind of dog, Chief?
He's a miniature golden doodle. I think somebody just pulled up in a driveway, so he's protecting the house right now. He's doing his duty.
Yeah, our next door neighbor has a mini golden doodle, and he does not like our dog. So, unfortunately.
So is he protecting or just being noisy and then inviting them to come take whatever they like?
Yeah, I think he's got a big bark, but I think he'd be, I don't know how good he would be at defending, but he definitely alerts us, put it that way. He's an alert dog, maybe not an attack dog.
Probably safer these days.
Okay.
And then I think if there's nothing else, Kevin, you can ask for a motion to adjourn.
All right. That was our last item, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Nice job, Chair.
Thank you. We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right.
Thank you all. It's great work tonight. And I will get cracking on it and send you all the final copy.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Blythe. Have a great week.
one. Yep.